Welcome to another edition of Possibilities, the official podcast of the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Institute, better known as My DDI. I'm your host, Roosevelt Belton Jr., the dissemination coordinator here at My DDI. Today, we continue our series on the past, present, and future of our institute. In this episode, we're focusing on the present, highlighting the important work My DDI is doing right now in Michigan's disability community. We're going to start this conversation with Angela Martin, My DDI's Senior Associate Director. Angela explains how My DDI has evolved to meet the modern needs concerning those with disabilities.
Years ago, we were introduced to My DDI. I'm also a family member. And the way that we became aware of what was then Developmental Disabilities Institute was because of the supports that were provided or the things that My DDI was working on, which was inclusive education. And my sibling at the time was in a center-based program. And so our family was really looking to the Institute for information. And I think that's been a steady piece of the puzzle over time, is that where innovation or new ideas could be tested and research could be shaped around a particular topic has been a present piece of everything that we've done. And then sharing our information and what we've learned with others in the community. The thing that I think has changed is the topics of what we get to delve into now. I mean, 40 years ago, thinking about apps that would be helping people navigate their life independently would have been a farcical idea. We would never have thought that. I see for my own sibling who receives supports and experiences disability, the advent of technology has been a huge game changer. Both for her to do things for herself, and I think also for her to work. And for others, it might be transportation. It could be equipment to live on your own. It could be ways to communicate. I mean, 40 years ago, the advent of technology has really accelerated that. And helping in how we've been able to help people see that is possibilities of increasing their community living, going to school, pursuing employment. That's changed a lot.
Now, Angela shares why My DDI's research focus has shifted over time and what that means for the people we serve.
Right now, we are doing a project. We've been invited by another USED to be a part of a 6-state research project on assessing mental health, the experience of mental illness with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Typically, research and assessment tools have not included people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So they may have missed the mark on accurately assessing for those needs. So this is a research project that will help develop a tool to better assess and identify the experience of mental illness for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We're one of 6 states participating in this project, but that ability to do research across states makes sure that we're, getting the most rigorous research approach, quality outcomes, and findings that are going to make a difference in the lives of people with disabilities. Other projects that we've worked on, we've had family support projects in Michigan, and there's been a network of family support projects across the country. And what one state can try to pilot and learn from, being part of that network, we can then learn from that, share information, and obviously refine or adopt or not do what maybe didn't work or what worked. And that really does help states and helps us to learn from other places. There's also that benefit of knowing that what one state does is possible for another state to, to embrace or to adopt, or maybe to take a different direction based on that experience. But that's where a strong network of learning together is really important, and avoid mistakes that others have done, or you're basically taking what they learned and building on it and going to the next level. So you're asking the next questions or addressing the next level of the issue. That's huge. And I mean, resources are often limited, so you can't always do everything you want.
That was Angela Martin. Now, we're going to hear from Michael Bray, MyDDI's Associate Director for Training. Michael talks about how communication efforts have evolved to better connect with the disability community.
I actually left DDI for 2 years, and for 2015 and 2016 worked for another college. And coming back, I have, it's changed a lot in the last 20 years. I think the primary way is that we've become, I think we've really recognized the impact that technology is the growing use of technology within the disability community, and the impact that has, both positive and negative. And it's something that we've had to be really cognizant of in the services that we provide, whether it's training, whether it's community support, and just disseminating information. And the big thing is really being aware of how those we serve use technology, so that we don't put up any barriers between us and the folks that we provide services to. So I think the biggest change is embracing technology, because initially there was a big resistance within some parts of the disability community, and by professionals in our space as well. They thought it would be inaccessible in many ways. In some ways it is. But I think for us, embracing it and really, showing how it can be, have a positive impact, showing how folks' lives can really benefit from the adoption of different technologies. But just, again, really being careful on how it's used, so we're not excluding folks just by using, different methods, different platforms. So I think that's been probably the biggest change.
Now, Michael reflects on how MyDDI has stayed true to its message, even as the tools and technology for outreach have changed.
The mission has never changed. The mission has been from the day I started working there, and it is to really focus on individuals, focus on families, and really valuing and putting their voice and their needs ahead of everything. So, while we have experienced change in that, in a lot of that technological space, maybe in the way we deliver training, in different ways, the mission has never changed. So I would say it's a little bit of both. I mean, we keep growing, but the mission has always been front and center. I don't think it's so much changed. I think the methods of getting that information and getting that mission out there has changed. But I think the message has been the same. And the message continues to be the value that individuals add to their communities, all individuals, inclusion. I don't think the message has so much evolved as much as our our mechanisms for getting that message out have evolved. I think, the message, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I don't think it's changed. I think from day one, I know since I've been there for the last 20 years, the mission has always been to promote inclusion, to support individuals, to provide access to, healthcare, transportation, the community, whatever it is. And I think that message persists. And I think it's still very strong.
That was Michael Bray. Now, we're going to hear from Elizabeth Jenks, our former director of training and now current research technician. Elizabeth talks about how our training programs influence the next generation of health professionals and their perspectives on disability.
We have several projects, and everyone has kind of their area of expertise. Mine is family support, and also disability awareness training for healthcare professionals. Some people do inclusive education. Other people, are working on post-secondary opportunities for people with disabilities. But the biggest evolution I've seen in my area has been around the disability awareness training for healthcare professionals. And, most parents of children with disabilities can tell a story of a very negative experience they may have had with a physician or a healthcare provider, either not understanding their child's disability or making demands of them, at appointments that are very difficult for them and make them feel uncomfortable. So one area we've really, I think, done a lot of change in is we were just invited, Sharon, Dr. Milberger and I were just invited to do a lecture at the medical school with 300 residents there, medical students. And, we got to do the disability awareness and get them a deeper understanding of what families are going through, at medical appointments, and understanding a little bit about the history of disability and why parents may have, or people with disabilities may have, negative connotations of medical experiences they've had because of institutionalization in the past and the treatment that people with disabilities got historically. So I've really seen the evolution there. The students at Wayne State Medical School were very interested in what we were saying. They asked great questions, and I can feel really good about, that evolution, that I feel like the healthcare providers are truly interested in engaging people with disabilities in a really proactive and respectful way.
Now, Elizabeth shares how My DDI's work helps people with disabilities grow, not just professionally, but within their communities.
Well, if I can use my son's example, Robert, when he was born, we didn't know if he would be able to ever live on his own or what would happen for him in the future. And he's living in his own home, 10 minutes away from most of his family. He has a roommate. He does have 24-hour care, of course, to help him with some things, but he loves it. He's happy. He comes home, he visits, he goes and gets his shoes after a while and indicates he wants to go back home. He's an uncle now, and, the kids look up to him and do things with him. And, so it's been, I think that's an example of, where my work, perhaps if I had not been exposed to the work at the Institute, I'm not sure that we would have had the opportunity to realize that dream. So for me, that's a really, deeply personal success story. And I think my family would agree with that as well. And Robert, he's quite happy. And we have so many great stories that, people that have benefited from the projects we've done, but also we've benefited from them. So many of them have become advocates. They come back, they do lectures in with the course I teach on disability. They're doing phenomenal work around the state. I believe you may have even done a possibilities video with a couple of the folks that do a lot of, like Alex and some other folks that do a lot of great work for us that kind of came to us in projects we did, but then evolved past our work and, kind of took charge and are doing their own thing out in the community and at policy level and making a difference and mentoring younger people with disabilities as well so they can model that. And hopefully we do some lasting systemic change.
You just heard from Elizabeth Jenks. To close this episode, we're joined by Luann Loy, a disability advocate and member of MyDDI's Community Advisory Council. She explains how MyDDI's research and support helps parents of children with disabilities make informed decisions about their children's future.
For me, I had just finished Partners in Policymaking, which is a group that helps to train individuals about disabilities and the history of the disability movement. And shortly after that, I became involved with DDI. DDI had a fantastic influence on our family. We were struggling with the system, not wanting Abby to be excluded from regular education. And at that time, inclusive education was a hot topic. And DDI is always relevant and forward-looking in terms of what they're doing research on and what their findings are. And so I look to them for guidance. The research they're doing is always relevant, and it can help you. As a parent of a child with a disability, you need to have relevant information. And they provided that. They provided it not just in conferences, but in smaller settings, and they did training as well, which they continue to do. Well, they have a finger on the pulse of what's going on in people's lives in a meaningful way. And what they try to do is do the research to figure out what's going on and then provide training to address that. And I think that's their core strength.
Listen to Luann reflect as she explains how MyDDI was helpful in her own daughter's journey towards inclusion.
Yes, we wanted Abby to be included in the regular education setting, given the same opportunities that a typical child would have. And DDI helped to provide information to help us achieve that. DDI really makes a difference because their attitude is to full inclusion, and that is very inspiring. When you're a parent and you have a child with a disability, typically you don't have any knowledge of that disability until your child is born. And so you go out looking for resources and information. And DDI is pretty easy to find. And that's why they're so helpful, because parents just don't know. This isn't a road that they've traveled before, typically.
That was Luann Loy. As we come to a close, we're going to hear once again from Angela Martin as she reflects on how far MyDDI has come and shares her vision for what lies ahead.
Best way I can see it is there are some people, my friends with disabilities, who are a little bit older than I am. They may not have experienced public education because they were born before the public education rule gave them access to public schools. They may have also lived in an institution separated from their family. And I look at a couple generations after them. Those individuals went to public school, and they may have had they have had jobs. And the generation just beyond them are young people who've only gone to public schools, who have been played on their local basketball team. They've had a job in their community. They've learned, they have a vehicle. They learn to drive. They've only lived in their neighborhood and community. They've never been separated. So with each generation, we see progress. I think the goal should be that the progress gap should be much shorter. And we shouldn't have to wait for somebody's full lifetime for them to see progress in their lifetime. I hope that changes. And we start to have progress occur quicker. I definitely know that younger people with disabilities have been encouraged to have their voice heard by others, and that is something that has changed. But it never would have happened if there wasn't strong advocates with disabilities before them, or parents with disabilities showing other parents how to advocate for their family member. Each generation needs to help the next, and we need to continue progress, for sure.
That wraps up this edition of Possibilities. Thanks for listening. A special thanks to our guests for sharing their insight and experience. If you'd like to learn more about MyDDI's work, visit our website at ddi.wayne.edu. Until next time, keep exploring your possibilities.